Okay. All right. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:33, and don't see anybody in the audience who isn't a principal. But it's very exciting to see all the principals. So we'll pass by the public comment section. I don't have any amendments to the agenda. So I would like to go to the consent agenda. Martha?
Question on that, because we have some changes to the meeting minutes. Do you want them pulled?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to pull the school board meeting minutes.
Right.
And
Do either of the other items need to be pulled? Okay.
I will make the motion that we approve the recommendation for professional appointment of Ann Burno Browning as a special educator at EMS, and approval of warrants.
Okay. Any, no discussion of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Thank you. So there are, Diane Clemens emailed me with a few items on the minutes from the last meeting. Martha, do you want to review them, or would you like me to?
What Diane sent to Martha was, it looks like she had 3 changes. She wanted the typos fixed on page 3, and it's under discussion. You'll see a start of a bullet that says "it's," and it should be IT''S. That same typo. Oh no.
It's on the same page.
There we go. It's on the same page. So I'm going to say wherever you, yes, under what about recruitment efforts? You'll see lack of drivers is a widespread issue. She wanted it to be, again, the ''S. And the other change she had was the discussion at the top of page 5 is regarding the second reading of E1. Then under communications task team update, she wanted it acknowledged that Patrick was the one that brought up what Liz mentioned. So all I did, I added Patrick per Liz brought up the concept of inequity.
Okay.
And that was it. And sorry about missing typos, but
I'm not an English major, but lack of drivers, that's plural, right? Drivers, I mean, that seems correct to me. ''S indicates a possessive. We're not, I mean, it may be small, but if we're going through
If
that.
we're going to be that picky.
That's, yeah.
Yeah. So we have a few problems with it, apostrophes, missing or added.
the way we have done it a lot of times, Prudential Committee years ago, was if you saw changes, if you could send them to the chair in advance, because then we can just read them off instead of having to go page by page.
Okay,
So.
any questions on the changes? The most substantive one was it being the wrong policy number, which led to lots of confusion in preparing the board notes for the meeting. So, okay.
I will move that we approve the school board meeting minutes of Tuesday, August 1st, 2017, as amended.
Okay, is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Thank you. All right, so we will move now to the presentation portion of the meeting, I said to Beth that I thought there were members of the board who had not met all the principals from our schools, and with school starting, it seemed like a good night to meet them and hear a couple minutes of comment from them. So, Beth, I'll let you introduce this.
Okay, so come on up. While they're moving, I would just like to say that this leadership group, and I've been working with them 6 weeks maybe, is absolutely amazing. And the collaborative nature that they have taken on in becoming one, thinking we've been doing work around our values and our beliefs. It gives me chills when I think about the work that they have done, and just, they're absolutely amazing. So I'll let them speak so we just set up 90 seconds. Like, you have 90 seconds to present yourself. Give yourself something personal, tell us a little bit about your school. So it's not long, but, okay guys.
Oh, it's me. I was the guy in the back with my hands up high. And Jeff Goodrich didn't raise his hand, so I could say my hands were high. My name is Bob Travers. I'm the Principal Director for Center for Technology Essex. I'm the only one that will have that distinction of principal and director, because in the tech world, we're directors, and in all other spaces, I think of myself as a principal, because my endorsement is identical to a principal's endorsement, and I do all the work these great folks do. A little bit about myself. I have been at Center for Technology Essex for going into my 14th year. I've been the director, principal there for 7 years. I'm a proud father of 3 boys who all went through the Essex town system and graduated from Essex High School. My wife is a kindergarten teacher, so we often have the put your administrator hat on, or we have a block on any bad statements about administrators at the dinner. Personal thing, I went to Sweden this summer to visit my eldest son, who lives in Stockholm. It's a beautiful country. If anybody wants to talk to me about it, I'd be happy to go on for a long time. Those 2 pictures were hard to select. I could have thrown up 125. That's later. Things that are happening at Center for Technology Essex. So our 2 main professional development strands this summer are this coming 2 or 3 years are curriculum instruction assessment and restorative practice and mindfulness. Under curriculum instruction and assessment, we are going to focus on standardizing our syllabi, documenting our proficiency-based graduation requirements, coming up with assessment plans that relate to those PVGRs, and coming into compliance with a federal requirement around programs of study, which are important for Perkins funding, but they're also providing a great lens to get into the conversation about the importance of standardized syllabi. Why all this is important work, besides some of it is compliance, is because it will provide us a great means to talk to our 9 sending high schools about proficiencies as those students that come to us need to qualify for graduation. Restorative practice and mindfulness has been something we've been working on for a while. We're in our 2nd year of restorative practice. We take a grassroots approach to many of our issues. Many of our teachers have taken on restorative practices within the building. We're expanding it through offerings of conferences and in-house courses. And then finally, trauma-informed instruction is something that we've focused on for 2 years and fits right into restorative practice and mindfulness. That's my 90 seconds.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Hi everybody, I'm Wendy Cobb. I'm the principal at Founders Memorial School and formerly Essex Town, and I put up our grades there because someone's always asking me, what grade are you again? 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Essex Elementary sends their kiddos on to me from 2nd grade. Mr. Farrell will talk about that. A little bit about me personally. I moved to Essex Town last year, so I am moving into my 4th year as principal at Founders, 6th year as principal. I was formerly principal for 2 years in Warren, Vermont, and before that, a special educator for 12 years in Richmond. Let's see. 3 grown kids, 2 grandkids, and very happy not having any more kids at home, and just visiting them when I want to. So this summer, I did a lot of reading, as you can see. That's just a sampling. I'm just a ravenous reader. I read a lot. I try to catch up on the DCF books so I can talk with kids about books, the Dorothy's List books. There are a couple really good ones there. If you haven't read it, folks, Project 1065, really, really good Dorothy's List book to read with kids, especially right now in our political climate. Went to Maine this summer with my family, spent a week in Ocean Park near Old Orchard Beach, Maine. That's where I grew up. I was telling someone earlier, I'm sort of a transplant from Maine. I've been here since I was 18 years old, so I think officially I'm a Vermonter, but that's where I grew up.
Sorry.
Let's see. In addition to many other things, I think 2 of the big things we will be working on this year, I think very similar to what a lot of us are going to be working on, is just making new connections with our new colleagues across the district, our students, of course, families. I even have connections. Connect is my word for this year, so really being very intentional about that connections piece on all fronts. And inclusive practices, we're changing our support services delivery model this year. We got into it last year. We started some training on the co-teaching model with Richard Villa. So we have about maybe 15 staff who are engaged in that, all of our special educators, and maybe 8 or 10 classroom teachers are being trained in the co-teaching to better provide services within the classroom setting versus a pull-out setting. So that's going to continue this year, and we are training 3 coaches to also build that capacity as we move forward with inclusive practices. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's it for me.
Thanks, Kathy.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Katherine Griffin, and I am the new principal at Hiawatha. And I am truly honored to be here and invited into this community. I kind of want to echo what Beth said when she opened. It has been such a amazing experience meeting everyone and connecting. People are so helpful, supportive, and anytime I've had a question about anything, it's answered like that. So I just thank my colleagues and the directors that are in the district for being so willing to support me as I start this journey. So this summer has really been for me trying to balance my new job with what I've called these precious moments. That is my son Harrison. He's 17 months tomorrow. He's our only child. My husband Dan, we've been trying to spend time as much as we can by the water, something that's very personal and joyful for me. And I invite you to come into my office and you will see a display of water. But the bulk of my summer truly has been spent listening and learning. I have had the opportunity to meet with families, directors, custodians, faculty, staff, people in the community, and really my goal was to listen and learn as much as I can so that when we begin the school year, we have a common ground. And I do feel like that goal has been met. I'm actually really ready to start now. I'm getting a little anxious. So my focus this year is really came out of the conversations that I had with faculty, staff, and families in the spring and throughout the summer. And really honoring all the hard work and the caring community that Hiawatha really is, and balancing it with change within the district, but also a huge change in the building, which is me. So focusing on relationships, balancing that change, balancing work life with our personal lives, and balancing academic growth with the social and emotional growth of our children. And that really came out of the conversations that I had with people over the last couple of months. So I'm very honored and excited to be here.
Well, thank you. Welcome.
Hey, all right. So Kevin Briggs, I'm the principal of Essex Middle School. This is my 10th year being in Essex, my 25th in education, so it's pretty exciting. We are the Eagles, and yes, my youngest daughter was married, and I jokingly but probably seriously I wish I put a dollar sign there instead. And it's her husband is not in the picture, but that doesn't mean anything. We love him still, but this was at the house just before. So for this those are our core values at the top that we've had for quite a few years, but something that we live by. Down here is what we're thinking about for this upcoming school year with the need for our personalized learning plans and all of our students. That's something that we've been working on. Ellen Thompson's already getting right into us and working closely with Jen, and Marcy with that. I'm going to skip the next one, but we're really moving ourselves towards this proficiency-based learning, and then really continuing communicating and supporting students and their families. I skipped professional learning communities there just because it's been such a core of what we've done in Essex Town that we're looking to bring that out. Jen and Marcy, who are standing right here next to me, and I have done a lot of talking over the last 3 years. So we're really looking forward to having our staffs work together. It started last spring, and the staff all staffs, I think, my staff at least, is very eager to get together. And so as we talk about professional development, I'm excited to be having those conversations as a middle school and having that. So that's where we're at.
I'm glad to hear you're not going to be retiring soon because of the wedding date.
That's another 15 years, right?
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Wood and I'm principal at ADL. I'm starting my 2nd year, so it's just where Katherine was last summer, so I can completely appreciate her experience this summer. And I feel very grateful to also be a part of this district and this team, and feel really excited about this upcoming school year. The staff at ADL and the school community, it's an amazing place, and the energy in our building is just contagious. That group of kids, that middle level, it's just, you can't help it, it's infectious. And the work that we are focused on is really nurturing that energy and really nurturing that inclusive, welcoming school community that we want to make sure that every kid comes in every day and feels that and continues to feel that throughout their day and throughout their experience. In ways that we are doing that, one thing that we are doing this year that's new is that we're bringing in the World of Difference program. That's something that actually EMS has been doing for a few years now, and we'll be implementing with peer facilitators this coming school year. And that program will be helping our students to really respect and value similarities and differences in people, which I think will be just an exciting program and timely for our community. We also have been working on implementing restorative practices, and both as in a professional learning community, as teachers, and with our students, just to build community and to also work as when students have conflicts as well, but it's also a community building piece of work that we're doing is with restorative practices. Also, in terms of advancing continuous growth and learning, ADL is a place where we really focus on the whole child and providing multiple opportunities for students, both in the arts, and I think that's an area that ADL will continue to work on this year. We're implementing a wellness block a couple of days a week where students will have different opportunities. Teachers will be offering different activities that kids will be able to do across the school with different kids that they're interested in the particular activity during their homeroom a couple of days a week, just a different idea for kids to build connections again and explore those interests. On a personal note, I just also enjoy the water and enjoyed time with my family. I have 2 daughters, ages 10 and 13. My husband's also a teacher, and we enjoyed time on the lake this summer.
Hi, I'm Marcy Lewis. I'm the principal at Westford School. This is my 5th year at Westford. It's my 8th year in Vermont. You wouldn't know that from the accent. I don't think anyone's ever going to call me a native Vermonter when if I were here 20 years. Both my parents visited this summer, so the accent got exceptionally thick in the last month. I spent time on the water with my family as well. We did some camping with the boys. I have a soon-to-be 6th grader and 2nd grader, my 2 favorite humans in the world.
We underwent some construction this summer and resurfaced the playground. We've built a gazebo and have some shade. It's going to be very exciting to welcome kids back with some of those facility improvements. So that's been a lovely addition over the summer that will be a nice surprise for kids. Although some of our middle school kids helped plan it. We have a climbing wall now, and some facility upgrades can really set the tone for the school year. But the real work, of course, is with the social emotional work that we do with PBIS and trauma-informed classrooms and the workshop model that we adhere to with literacy, and that's a pretty big deal for us. The theme this year will be effective collaboration, so we have a teaming model as well, some changes within the service delivery model that I really think will get the most from our teachers working together. So that's our theme this year, and I'm super happy to be part of the new district. I feel really fortunate to be the principal at Westford.
Driveway didn't get done this year, did it?
Excuse me?
The driveway?
Well, did you notice the playground improvements?
That is wonderful.
Did you see the cabinets? Did you see the cabinets? He filled it in with some gravel. So if you come to Westford, it will be bumpy. Not unlike the road that you travel to get to the parking lot. It's really what we expect. Another reason we're super happy to merge with Essex. Perhaps that will be on the capital plan in the future, but most importantly, I put a picture of our kids from the robotics club. Quite the accomplishment that they had, and I look forward to working with those kids again next year. They represented Vermont in the international Lego competition in DC. We were the only school in Vermont to win that, and you can see it's pretty impressive. Their project was amazing. Check out our webpage. You can see some of the real live research that they're doing around the bee population, and they interacted with folks in DC, not just Bernie Sanders, but folks for a patent for their project. So it has a real world application. It's very exciting. And the t-shirts were student designed.
Thanks.
Good evening, I'm Dan Ryan. I do claim to be a native Vermonter, even though I was born and brought up in Burlington. I'm very proud to be the principal of Fleming School, where I'm beginning my 17th year as principal. So I guess that makes me the dean of principals in the district now, the longest serving principal. I'm also proud that I'm the longest serving principal in the history of the Fleming School facility. It's proud history of 105 years this year. There's no principal that's served more than 15 years in that school in 105 years. So I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the history of the school. If you ever visit the school and take a tour with me, I think I'll demonstrate that pride and show you the historical value of the school, which I tried to keep alive with our students and staff. So we have Founders Day every September 19th to honor Thomas Fleming, who was the school custodian there for almost 30 years. And the school district and school board honored him by renaming the Prospect Street School to the Thomas Fleming School. So as I said, I'm beginning my 17th year. It's my 30th year as a school principal this year, and also coincidentally, it's also my 30th year of marriage to that lady in the picture there. So we celebrated our 30th anniversary by taking a trip to Scotland and to London and to Ireland to end the trip. So that's a picture from the Dingle Peninsula. And as I said, the cows from Vermont came out to greet us. A little personal information. I have a wife who is a director of a preschool in Burlington, so she's administrator. I don't have to worry about her stepping on administrators here in our house. And I have 3 boys, ages 29, 27, and 25. So they get a chance to experience Ireland a couple years ago with us too. So I'm proud of my heritage. Some of the things that we're focusing on at Fleming School, and it sort of sounds like alphabet soup, in terms of educational ease, but PBIS, we're going to become a PBIS school. we're just kicking that off here this fall. So really pleased to be moving in that direction and join our colleagues at Westford School and Summit Street School with being PBIS schools. Also, we're building upon a solid foundation of MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, to improve systematically and comprehensively approach to provide high-quality education at the school and in the EWSD district. So we're an expanded system, so it's really an important focus for us all to move forward together in terms of MTSS, which provides a framework that is very important to follow and to guide our work. So that's Dan Ryan and Thomas Fleming School.
Thanks, Dan.
Good evening. I'm Suzanne Grunling. I'm the principal at Summit Street School. It's my 9th year as a school administrator. I come from 5 years at Chittenden East before at Camel's Hump Middle School, where I used to work right next door to Wendy. And so it's nice to have some connections back in our new district. I have 15-year-old twins who will be 16 in less than 60 days. And anyone who's had 15-year-olds here knows that I have spent my summer in a car with teenagers driving. And twins means I have no time that I'm not in a car where anybody's driving. So if anybody's been on the phone with me this summer, if I was on the phone while somebody was driving for a second, they hear me say, "Stop!" And then they know it's I have a teen driver in the car, and I'm just expressing my thoughts. I also, my family spends time on the lake. That picture was from last night on the waterfront in Burlington, right by Battery Park. Nice to spend time with my daughter and my husband out on the water last night. Interestingly enough, my son is in Acadia, Maine with Boy Scouts, and Acadia's a big place, right? I've never been, but it's a big place, you would think. And right next to my son in the campsite is the Essex High School cross-country team. And I just got off the phone with them right before this meeting and just finished playing Foursquare with the cross-country team. So they're doing well. My family I grew up in this area. I have cousins who went to Essex schools. My niece and nephew are in Essex schools right now. Sort of an interesting fact when I look at Fleming right next door, my grandmother's brother long ago was a longtime member of the Essex School Board, and back when that was the high school, and they used to meet there, and they used to live on Prospect Street, so I get to walk by that every day. It's an interesting connection. I'm going to start with this picture here. One of my favorite things that we do at Summit Street School is we have Walking Wednesday. And every Wednesday at 7:25, I make an announcement in the school to say that the walking school bus is leaving from the back ramp. And anywhere from 5 to 10 staff join me every single Wednesday morning at 7:25. And we have a nice colleague walk out to Densmore Street to the parking lot there. And we have a handful of kids that meet us there every Wednesday. And unless it is below zero or it's thundering and lightning, and that was all but I think one Wednesday last year. So we miss 1 or 2 Wednesdays every year. And then we're extremely lucky to have our geographical distance not always just close to Fleming, but also close to the high school. And we enjoy a lot of partnership with the high school, and I can't quite remember which team this is, but in the month of May, a different sports team comes every Wednesday and walks with us. So we see the tennis team, we see the baseball team, the softball team, the track, and lacrosse, they all come through and they walk with us every Wednesday and a spattering of other Wednesdays through the year. And they are excellent at that job. They show up and they right away they find a student and they don't stop talking all the way to school. Really cool. And then they quick run. We take this picture and then they all have to get to class in time. So the high school also comes over with the band, the chorus. Also does buddy program with us all through the year. Classes walk over if they've had a special literacy project that they want to present to students and do reading of poetry or short stories. So that's just a fantastic connection for us right next door. Just a little ways around. And that right there is a picture of our end of year show. Just a phenomenal, specials program at Summit Street School, and always with a culmination of the art and music at the end of the year. And if you ever get a chance, you want to come to the end of the year show, we'll be sure to save you a nice front row seat for the end of year show. Our goals, our professional learning communities, just really focusing on our student service teams as professional learning communities, our academic teams as professional learning communities, and just a great with our focus on relationships and the way that we work in the merger and expanding those out to making connections across schools. We are really excited to be in our 4th year of PBIS, and I put up our Be Safe, Be Kind, Be Responsible, and those are our 3 areas that we focus on with students and sort of run everything through. We are a year 4, and that puts us in our focus of year 1 and 2, where universal, where we focused on what are all of our school-wide expectations and culture. And in year 3 and 4, we added to that and continue to add to it this year our targeted interventions for students and really addressing that social, emotional, and identifying places to teach lagging behavior skills in a really systematic way. So excited for another year of PBIS as well.
Suzanne.
Good evening. I'm Peter Farrell. I'm honored to be the principal at Essex Elementary School. I am beginning what I believe is my 8th year there. Before that, I was at Founders. I was the assistant principal at Founders School for 4 years. And before that, I was at the Rumney School, where I took over after Dan left. I'm just following Dan. I'm behind the cows. Our focus this year, we have been working in professional learning communities for 7 years now. And we are really, we have some incredibly high functioning teams in the building who are our grade level teams and our special ed team, who are talking about students, they're talking about curriculum, they're talking assessments, they're talking units, they're comparing notes, they're designing all of their curriculum together, they're designing their assessments together, they're comparing and learning from each other. It's been really a wonderfully empowering process for our staff. When we first set out on the PLC road, one of the things that the staff said was, we've had so many turnovers, we've had so many principals, we've had so many superintendents, and every one of you comes in with something new. And my promise to them was, we do this right, and you will no longer be waiting to find out what the new thing is. You will be saying, this is what we do, how are you going to add to it? So we are continuing with that, but we have also, we've realigned our special ed model so that we have special educators assigned to specific teams within the teams on those grade levels. So in addition to serving as their own professional learning community, those special educators will also be part of the PLC at that grade level. What we have found is that with the school day as busy and as filled as it is, there's never enough time for teachers and special educators to sit down and have really thoughtful conversations about children. And so we believe that this is what is going to provide that time, and it's going to provide the focus for those conversations to help those children who are really struggling. We are also focusing on distributed leadership. Those PLCs that I mentioned, each of them is run by a teacher leader at that grade level. The teacher leaders, it would not be possible to do this work if there were not teacher leaders. There's no possible way for a principal to go to each of those meetings. They have 2, sometimes 3 meetings a week. Sometimes they're simultaneous. There's just no way. So what we're finding is that as we distribute leadership, as we cultivate leaders throughout our building, we are all becoming stronger. And I'm really looking forward to expanding that. And then I look at those two aspects, those 2 foci, the strengthening teams and the focus, and I'm really excited to be working on that at a district level with my colleagues here. We came into this merger as Essex Town as a very strong team, and I feel like we have joined an incredibly strong team that is larger and therefore, I believe, stronger because of our numbers and because of the way that we have gelled in our work together has really been wonderful. And I only see that growing. This is my wife Nancy on the right. We are clinging to each other because that's the Northern Cascades. 5 feet behind us is about a 2,000-foot drop. So neither of us are smiling. We're really grimacing. It reaffirmed my fear of heights. We took a trip this summer. We were out for 2 weeks in Washington, Oregon. And it's the longest we have ever been away from our children, who are 19 and 27. Which I think indicates a problem. And coincidentally, we were visiting a friend of ours, he was originally a friend of my parents. He's 93, 92. We were visiting him a couple weekends ago, and he said, "So how long have you guys been married?" And we kind of looked at each other and went, 30 years this year. So we are also sharing a thing. We're not going to Ireland. So thrilled to be here, thrilled to be at Essex Elementary School.
So good evening, I'm Robert Reardon, principal of the high school. I'll start my 14th year as principal this year. Been in the community for many years, really pleased to be here. I think this unification will just solidify my belief that it's second to none in terms of a school district in the state, and in many cases New England. My 2 kids went through the town schools and high school and are now in college and doing quite well in their respective areas, so they had good preparation from a K-12 perspective. So in terms of our work ahead for this year, and we have 4 bullets there, but there's more than that, to say the least. But in terms of our 3 to 5 year rollout for proficiency-based learning, PBL, what we're taking on this year are transferable skills, and the faculty voted unanimously a few years ago to adopt the Vermont Agency of Ed's transferable skills. In terms of assessment, this will be the 2nd year that we'll be working on assessments in terms of analyzing current assessments, making sure they're quality assessments, and making sure that we are assessing course proficiencies, which teachers have taken a lot of work in terms of making sure that we are calibrated properly. Restorative practices, we're going to be in our 2nd year, similar to Bob and CTE. Ben Johnson, our hire last year as assistant principal, he's kind of spearheading that movement. Al and Liz, you've met Ben. Grading practices in terms of proficiency-based learning, it's probably the next step in terms of conversations. Spark Notes version this past year, we took 2 learning habits out of the academic grade, reported them separately on a 1 through 4 rubric scale, and we see further work ahead as we move towards full implementation in the year 2020, 2021. Another bullet point that isn't up there, that now with the unification I'm really excited, is to work with middle school colleagues and reassess what the 9th grade experience could be for students. What are they going to need to better prepare them? Because obviously each transition year is critical in their success moving forward. I chose the football picture not because I'm biased to football, but because because that is the sport right now that is officially underway. They started technically yesterday, and I hope when the deluge occurred they were inside because they had a 4 o'clock practice. The rest of our sports teams will start Thursday, and at the high school, that's when you really know school's coming around the corner, when you have about 480 kids return. So Thursday it'll be bustling as the way it should be. In terms of summer, family reunion, Beth, I didn't realize we were taking pictures, but you really don't want to see pictures of a family reunion, so I'm just glad we didn't have time to do that. I did include the last thing at the bottom, class of 1982 reunion tour, and 1 to 2 times a summer I get a request. And it was last Saturday, right in here at about 11:45, that I was bringing the 26 members of the class of 1982 that wanted a tour because things had changed. And the reason I bring that up is because of what I said in the beginning, the excellent experience and opportunities that are provided of our kids from a K-12 perspective. When you hear adults who have been out of school 25, 30, 35, 40 years, and they come back, and then as they walk the halls, they're talking like 18 again. But when you meet them in the lobby and when you say goodbye after the tour, they are so thankful for their educational experience and the experiences they had when they were here at Essex High School, for them, Essex Junction High School in 1982. But it just makes me realize more and more every year of we can't take this for granted. And boy, the kids that come through here, they are well prepared, and I firmly believe that. So it's great to be here, and look forward to working with you, and obviously Brian and Beth. And I've been in a little bit of a different situation in terms of I think my Essex Town colleagues, in the sense that the high school, of course, as you know, was unified from about 94, 95 on. So, you know, whether it was Ned Kirsch or Kevin, Peter, I often have school conversations and banter in the parking lot to my driveway, depending on who's coming and going during the year. But we've had a good relationship as well, because obviously we worked hard before the unification. But I think it's, as someone said, it's just going to be better moving forward, and I firmly believe that. So thank you for your work too.
Thank you all.
Good luck to you all.
Give Marcy your chair.
Yeah.
You should have you sit.
What's she do?
She fractured her knee. And like behind this year.
What's that?
Like at the top.
Yeah.
Where it sits, so it's
I'm not crying, but
Well, she's not. I could tell she was in pain up there, but I also didn't want to point it out to her. You don't need, you know. I should have.
Will this presentation be on the EWSD board site?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. All right. Well, that was an inspiring way to start the year.
It's an amazing team.
Oh,
Yes.
and soon we'll have students. It's great.
Budgets are nice too.
I'll start Excel as much as you can.
Say that again in January.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to the school board business portion of the agenda, and the first item is a transportation update. Is that you, Brian?
Yeah,
I assume
we'll
it
tag
is.
team
We'll
it
do
some.
it together.
Okay.
So we put together this update. So just kind of quickly, where we currently are. So at the Westford community, all the routes have been designed and tested. Communication covering the routes, including the new high school routes, have been gone out to parents. The high school routes are specifically asking parents whether they know they are going to certainly opt out, or whether they're certainly going to opt in, or whether they're on the fence. And it just allows us to grab some efficiencies as we're looking for some of those loops. And it's kind of a traditional ask that happens in Westford. So business as usual with 2 new high school routes coming on board. Essex Town, all the routes are designed and now being tested, so the routes come out of the software and then they actually get run to see if everything works the way it's designed. Again, it's a long-standing set of routes, so we're adding, it's through attrition and the new students and kind of reworking that. Route information will be going and be communicated to parents this week. We'll probably do a similar thing. We'll post online, and then Ben will push that out, and then there'll be a series of places where we also communicate in print. So. In Essex Junction, the decision to postpone was communicated through media and social media. School-based communication regarding the postponement for busing in Essex Junction is going out this week. So there's a 1-page flyer that's been created that's going to be going out. Some parents may have already seen it.
Yeah, we got it earlier this week.
Each school is working on a different schedule, but probably by the time we get to the end of this week, all schools will have communicated. So that's where we currently stand. I did want to just go in as a sample of engagement in social media. The Essex Reporter picked it up. This guy, Brendan Kenny, who sort of just hunts us down, he shared a link. And then Ben has been managing the Essex Westford School District. In all, we've got 39 shares, which is actually incredibly high in comparison to what we have. I can't always see where the shares go if they're shared into places that aren't public or I don't have group rights to. But I know that that's a high number, or I know that from Ben, that's a high number for us. And in total, out of that smattering, we've had about 20 commenters. Some of them are addressing topics outside of transportation. Some are addressing possible solutions, and some are addressing their feelings and sort of sentiments regarding it.
I think that along with some phone calls that we have had, also Brian has done a great job. I was in the office when he dealt with someone, and I appreciate the time that he spent with one person was amazing. So I think that they've reached us all kinds of ways. But
in addition to this, we did have Local 44 or Local 22.
Local Fox News, whatever that is.
That's
They came
44.
over,
44.
did something that showed up at their 6 o'clock newscast. It's also been on Front Porch Forum. There's been 2 on Front Porch Forum that I'm aware of. And again, I think the most recent one is working on the overall scope of transportation, but also visiting some of the other areas from merger to Act 144 and so forth. So.
And just to say, having followed all of those, a lot of comments were in support of the decision to not go forward with busing this.
Yeah.
It wasn't all, there were some negative, but there are also a lot of people in support of that decision.
Well, I think the board, I figured the board would like to know, like, well, so, you know, I have been on the phone with some people for over an hour, many people for a shorter period of time. People have stopped by the office and spoken with us. So we have a fairly, it's not representational, but we've got, you know, in dozens of people that we've spoken to at this point in time. And I think that it ranges. I mean, from worried to happy, frustrated to confused. Disappointment is the key element that I hear. People are expressing that they're disappointed. I know the board expressed that they're disappointed. Certainly, I hope I haven't kept it a secret that administration is disappointed that we weren't able to come through with it. I think we're moving now to a point where the community is becoming concerned or interested in becoming engaged in helping out people that need help. You know, I think we're kind of, that may be the next stage we move into, but probably better to hear from what your perspective of where we're at with regards to feelings and sentiments.
One detail that seemed unclear to my neighbors was the factors that led us to be able to achieve transportation for Westford High School students and not for Essex Junction students. So that there was still some confusion out there about there being multiple contracts.
Yeah.
So I think to assuage people's, like, why do they get new transportation and not us?
Yeah.
We could continue to communicate about how there are multiple contracts this year, how that fact gives us some hope that things won't be exactly the same problem next year.
Yeah.
Because we'll be able to make different approaches that serve all of the towns.
Sensitivity. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to share a few comments. I was talking with Martha earlier, and even though I wasn't at the meeting, my main concern was the number of students in the southern area that have to go through Five Corners. And I guess there was some discussion regarding the safety aspect, especially for younger children and for inclement weather. If there's any issue in that area, I think it ought to be brought back to the board in a timely way so that we can address that, because Five Corners there are times when it's just a little bit concerning about all the turns and traffic and going through red lights and all that. So, especially just the number of kids. So
The police are usually there, though.
yeah, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not 100%. The second comment had to do with consultant can plan efficient routes. And through some of my master's work at St. Mike's, we got into modeling and difficult modeling problems and issues. I think with a little research, we could find someone who can model for optimized cost, for school locations, for different ways. And I would hope that we could find someone that can provide that service on a yearly basis. And here's why. We know that there's an increased turnover in the student population in the junction. And that we have, maybe you might have 3 kids in the same house going to 3 different schools. So the modeling aspect of it, to me, is just critical to having a heads up on a yearly basis before school starts.
Liz, did you have?
I did, and Pat and Ben and I met about coming up with a strategy for communicating. I think the key is that we have to continue to communicate as we're figuring this out, and it can't be, oh, here's a big thing, and now let's communicate it. We're going to really try to have regular communications to the community as we're figuring this out. So that's one thing. And the other thing that has come to me is that through the work, since the forum and even before that, but certainly since the forum, that there's an understanding for the complexities of this this issue, and that has led to more of a tolerance around that. And I think that the more that we can do as a board to keep the community informed about how complex this is and about how, I think the better off we are, because I think once they're less mad when they understand, wow, that's a lot to figure out. And I think that's where we are now. I think the communication to date has been really great from the administration and from the board, and Brendan's work and leading that, I think has helped to have there be 20 commenters instead of 500, which we have seen in this community on certain issues. And I think that's something we can be happy about. And again, our challenge, I think it's a communications task team primarily to make sure that we are ahead of it and getting information out before it comes to here's a decision we've made.
Right.
Good point, Brendan.
So obviously, given my role in this topic and in this issue, I was disappointed
It's your fault.
at the outcome. Yeah. No, Brian, let me know that.
Down on vacation again?
So, but when I was very sort of intrigued by the fact that when one of the communiques went out and people responded directly to me, I heard a larger number than I expected, maybe 5 people, who were interested about whether or not, and typically it was a household where the mom lives in Essex Junction, the dad lives in Essex Town, wondering that on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, can Johnny be brought to his school in Essex Junction? So there was talk about, like, how do I get my kid on this transportation system to their school if I happen to be a single mom living in Essex Junction, but they normally live with their dad. So there was just a lot more sort of cross-community questions about how to, am I going to have service to can my kid be delivered to his school if their home school is not necessarily where they're living? Right. So that was it was sort of a surprise to me that came up, and I think that may bring to the fore more quickly than maybe we anticipated this idea of, can I transfer to a different school, or can the system can the transportation system be integrated in a way that I can get to my school no matter where it is in the district? So I think that's a bigger challenge than than the way we've been thinking about it to date. Yeah. But I was just surprised at the number of people who contacted me with that specific kind of situation. So, for what it's worth, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, that's interesting, Brendan, because if you think about those situations where one parent is in Westford and one parent is in Richmond, no one would ever expect there to be transportation.
Right.
So,
but within the same district, there was an assumption that if I'm in the same district, my kid should be able to get a ride to school.
Well, that's pushing it.
That's pushing it. Okay.
I'm just telling you what people
No, thanks.
I'm not
I
taking a
appreciate understanding, Marla.
I think I have been much meaner than other people sitting around the table. People that have said things to me, I have come back and said, well, I asked my husband to quit his job and drive bus for us. And he said, absolutely no way. And everybody I said that to said, are you kidding? I would not do that. So, there's a piece of, if local people don't want to volunteer to become drivers for the district, where do you get them from?
I asked my husband too.
Yeah.
Retired.
And they're not hiring teenagers. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
We can barely insure our own
Teenagers.
Just on that question of intra-district transportation and transfers, I think it would probably be worthwhile to see what we might learn from like a Chittenden East, because they both transport. They allowed for choice to the extent it allowed them to rebalance their school buildings. I wonder if they stagger start time. I know Essex Town staggers start time to be able to accommodate our bus schedules. So while the pause was not intentional, I think it allows us to be more intentional about our planning and our research and what we might learn to be responsive to those questions, because some of that seems like that couldn't possibly be reasonable. We need to know like on what days kids are going where to be able to get kids there to plan routes, and others of it may have been addressed and handled in a way that we wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah. Essex Town does deliver people to like activities on certain days of the week.
If the bus is going, so they can say like, I think if you're going to the, I don't know, the Edge or something, they can get to where the bus is already going.
Well,
some buses already go past parts of Essex Junction. So
No,
it's not
it might
that unreasonable
make
a
sense.
question.
It's just you could imagine if the start times are different, it could be really crazy.
You have been very spoiled with that personalized. You can tell them this day I'm going here and here and here, and again, I think that the more we can understand the complexities of, around this new district, the more we can understand that maybe we have to not expect to be as pampered as we've been.
And that is pretty unique. I remember that coming
And
up
that's
as
not
we were
easy.
dealing with the last round of bus change in Essex.
I have a question referring to some of Al's comments. I think I asked at the last board meeting, we still have the same crossing guards in Essex Junction. We're making sure that we're still doing the same things we were doing when we were always a walking district. And I know when my son and when I've gone through Five Corners before school starts in the morning and in the afternoon, I have never seen a cop and their car not be there. If that's the case, then I would say we need to talk to the...
They've made a patrol commitment to be there, so I haven't personally seen them not there either, but I can imagine if there was some civil emergency that they would be. And we do, on that basis, we've kept the infrastructure that the school has had in the past. And then finally, we do there is a modeling system. We've been using TransFinder in the town for a number of years. VersaTrans is another one. They're incredibly sophisticated systems that work in a series of optimals. There was a parent that just shared with me a MIT student that's just come out with some new research for the Boston public school systems that kind of turns a few of the current methods on top of its head. There's also been some really interesting research out of Maryland public school system. All of that. I mean, here we are. We have a moment to make things better, right? That's really, it's always your choice. So I think we need to look at it, and I think there's a lot of things that I want to be careful not to blame on transportation, but there'll be opportunities for us to improve our system systemically and bring forth transportation. We have to look at start and stop times. We're going to have to look at school assignments. We're going to have to look at districting. And it may not be all with a switch being turned, but they're all topics that we kind of knew were going to be coming up at some point. And we need to understand that at some of these moments, we need to look to see what is the value to our community. I mean, if we had a 28 bus fleet that was transporting students 4 hours a day, it could transport citizens 6 hours a day on top of that. We could create an entire internal public transportation system. Does the community value it? Maybe the answer is no, so we wouldn't do it. But we have a lot of redundant systems right now with the SSTA, with the senior bus, so forth. So it's time for us to think big to seize the best opportunities to serve our overall community.
So I'm just wondering, should we?
I have some incredible slides.
Let's finish the transportation. Finish the
I was very
presentation.
Is there animation?
And go back to questions.
I'll just shake the screen. So one of the issues that's come up in some of the comments, and certainly has been part of the wrestling match, is the issue of equal versus equity. And I think it's important that the board gets a solid grounding, the district gets a solid grounding in this, because transportation is just the first issue out. We're going to be encountering this because we have differences, and when there's differences, people try to understand how those are best defined. So
here's a great visual, and I've seen this before, and you may have also. I think it explains it in so many ways, a good visual for. So on the right side with equity, it's about the outcomes of it. So as a student goes through our system, and the outcomes that they have the same kind of experiences, that they're all there overlooking, they can all see over the fence. It's not equal as the first one shows. I just think it's a really good visual. I'm a very visual learner, so this one speaks to me. The next slide is a little more wordy for those people that like words. But it's saying the same thing. I'm not going to read it to you, but if you want to take a second and read it.
So it is about resources versus outcomes is really one of the biggest parts of it, and we already know that. I mean, there is a transportation network already established in Essex Junction for students that need that in order for their access to a free and public education. So we already sort of know that there are different resources required in order to have similar or same outcomes that we hope for our students.
And I think, as Brian said when he first started with that slide, this is our first of many, 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 many conversations about equity. So it's a good place to start, but we will be tackling it a lot, and I think wrestling with it a lot. And same with the leadership team, thinking about equity in those conversations we've been having with them. So.
Because we're showing up in this first year of having the 4,500 students in our care, we're showing up different, and our communities show up different, and they show up different with regards to transportation. There's different infrastructure, there's different municipal understandings, there's different proximities and distances, there's crossing guards, and there's history. And so, when we look at it, what is reasonable in an area that has paved roads, paved sidewalks, and curbing is different than in a community that has dirt roads, rain gutters, mud. It's a different situation. So, and that is part of same resources versus same outcome, and we're getting the outcome now with 146-year history. There has been an outcome that students in Essex Junction have made their way to the schoolhouse to be educated.
Do we have data on the reality of snow removal in the junction? Because certainly if there's actually like more than an inch of snow, my sidewalk isn't plowed because they focus on the center of town. I think we have real snow removal in the radius that we had planned to have continue be walking, but I'm not sure we have real snow removal
for the whole
in a timely fashion in the entire village. So it just would be impossible when there's a significant quantity of snow.
Well, it is a criteria for opening school, and so the data we use is firsthand reports from Public Works with regards to,
That they've plowed all of the sidewalks in the entire village?
well, so there are places where there are sidewalks on both sides of the street, and it does not mean that both sidewalks have been
Right.
cleared.
There's, well, our street, they never cleared the other side.
Okay.
I'm wondering,
Yeah.
and I actually don't know this, Kelly, but in our neighborhood, we have like a requirement of our association that we're supposed to keep our own sidewalks clear in front of our properties.
That's what it was like when I lived in Massachusetts
So
as well.
I didn't know if like in the more neighborhoods that have associations, if that is something that's part
We
of the
don't have one,
association.
so.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But in our neighborhood now, it's different. If we have a good snowstorm, the town used to have these snow blowers that come down and just blow the snow out into the lawn areas. Since the town mergers through the municipal, those have gone to the junction, and we're now faced with the ones that just try to push the snow back. But the biggest problem is that the town snowplows come through, and they just throw all that snow back into the sidewalk areas. They come
From
through
the
so
street?
fast, so
Yeah.
fast. They're trying to cover so many streets that they don't drive the speed limit. They just come through, plow everything in.
Well,
And you can't get out of your driveway, and people really can't use the sidewalk.
I mean, I think as I talk about this, I don't want to suggest anything except the fact is that we have full intention to add transportation to
Yeah.
Essex Junction.
Right.
With the sensitivity of a radius. I mean, that's the full intention, and we're shooting to bring the viable solutions in November. This is really that there is definitely a difference in snow removal in Westford versus Essex Junction and some in Essex Town. So there's those elements, and really what it comes back to is, the statute, and this is the same language that is within your policy as a board, is reasonable and necessary. So you can see that all school boards have the option. They may provide transportation. So in the state of Vermont, it is not legally required, but it is legally required for the board to assess whether all reasonable and necessary means have been taken for children to arrive at elementary or secondary schools. So in the past, the historical practice of the Prudential Committee reviewing reasonable and necessary, there's a long history of Essex Junction Prudential Committee doing that. And there is even at least 2, maybe 3 times that the Prudential Committee has gone out to the community, the voters, and asked in special article whether they should add busing. And those, obviously, if they had been approved.
And we had amounts of money proposed in there, and that got overwhelmingly always shot down.
So I think the reason for this is, again, not to necessarily cover the interest is, right in your policy, you say that the district is therefore providing transportation. That is the intent. This is all about whether we're talking equal or equity.
Right.
And in this case, because the reasonable and necessary has gone through, because the voters have gone through, and because the board and the infrastructure and the different municipality, we're really talking about that we don't have equal transportation currently, and we probably never will, because we're talking about adding a radius, and there are no radiuses added to the other schools, and probably can never be a radius added to Westford. So those are just, we'll almost never be equal, but what we want to work towards is that equity issue. So next steps, we'll scope out the various options, looking specifically at EJ, but also considering the entirety, and maybe slaying this idea of multiple contractors. But we need to look at systemic opportunities, and we just want to be upfront and transparent that we're going to be looking and talking about things well before making decisions, and we need to have a safe space to have those conversations. So there will be conversations about a start time of a school that won't initially impact somebody, and that was one of the reasons why we didn't want to rush Essex Junction to try to figure out how to make an 11-pound recipe with 1 pound of ingredients. We had 1 bus driver and 11 routes. We didn't want to go to the point of 3 weeks before school start to talk about changing start times and changing.
Right.
But I think with some preparation, we can not only talk about it as a response to improving our transportation, but as an opportunity to improving our education.
Yeah. Good.
So Brian, what is one of the viable solutions that you anticipate presenting? Would it be the status quo? In other words, what we're going to have for the 2017-18 school year, is that going to be one of the solutions that we'll be choosing from as a board?
No. That's not what the administration will bring forth. I mean, we've been charged with bringing viable solutions to the board in November for transportation to include Essex Junction in the next school year.
Okay.
The board could reject all those viable solutions and choose status quo, but that won't be an option that administration will bring forward.
Is that in your presentation? Okay. Patrick?
My evidence isn't exactly purely anecdotal. Some of it is fact-based. But I know that some of the principals, Tom Bojanski at Hiawatha before this, had problems with families who, specifically he mentioned ELL before he left, who had difficulties communicating, getting their kids to school with the busing. They just had lack of transport that we thought was obviously coming in relief. Understanding that we're going to start seeing these solutions in November, is there any way for the administration to identify possible families or possible numbers of these affected families that are in Essex Junction that are having trouble getting their children to school between now and November? I'm looking at possibly looking at and understanding the numbers of families that we have affected by being unable to get busing there, because I know that they're out there and I know that they exist, but I don't know what the numbers are, and that would be something that I'd be really interested to know, because if we can put in a stopgap for those who are having the most difficulty, I would really like to see us, even if it's just a mitigating step between now and next fall.
Well, we've also, I've begun to reach out to SSTA, who is Special Service Transportation that exists within the county, is a funded organization within the county. Also the senior bus that's currently operated by the community and what their capacity is during certain times of the day. Again, trying to look at this as a holistic community solution. The key element, and I saw this right in the Facebook comments, is that we encourage families that have any challenge in getting their kids to school is to talk to their school. Because once they do that, then through the multi-tiered support system, we can start to identify what that kid needs in order to access their education. And that ranges. That ranges from whether it's transportation to get to school, or free and reduced meals, or additional studies or supports, or a 504, or an IEP that may be necessary. So I think definitely encourage them to identify themselves to their school principal or to a trusted teacher or anyone within.
And we certainly can have the conversation with principals about helping us to identify that number. I think that's great. It's part of also the conversations we've been having this summer around our core beliefs and values and accessing education, all of that. So it just fits into the work and the outreach to our community that we want to have. So
yeah, because I think the vast majority of us Essex Junction parents who are out there can live with the status quo for another year. But I know that there's those who are currently existing in the junction who can't live with the status quo and haven't been able to live with the status quo. And in some cases, that's fallen onto our principals to literally drive kids home after school. And I don't want to see that happening if we can provide something between now and next year.
If we utilize a different kind of vehicle, would they have to be equipped with stop signs? And there's going to be a different level of liability involved.
Well, schools have done transportation via city buses in the past.
City buses.
Burlington uses city buses. Brendan.
So the last thing I'll say on this topic is one of the questions that I was unable to answer on social media, and I think it was just because I missed the meeting, was what about all that money that we approved for
Right.
for the addition of buses? What's going to happen to it? Do we get it back? So that might be something we want to think about communicating more clearly about. I think as people sort of come to grips with the fact that it's not coming, the next question is going to be, well, what about the cash? So if we can just have if the board members could be provided with just the quick answer to how to explain that, that would be really helpful for me, and I'm sure for others.
So he did talk about that last time, and it was included in the
Facebook slideshow.
The information that went out. So
It was in the reporter too.
Yes.
I think it's okay to get it out there again. I think those things,
Right,
you know, if you missed it and here you sit on the
Doesn't
board.
hurt.
Exactly.
So, and it would be interesting to talk, you know, I think Martha brought it up, is that it is not permissible for a school district to spend money on the municipality and vice versa. These are separately raised taxes and so forth. But that fund balance from this year would not be available until we go into FY20. Because it has to be audited and it has to be cleared. So as it goes into 20, it gives us time to talk among our community and say, do we bring this all in to lower taxes, that subsequent tax obligation, and do we take all that relief, or do municipalities understand that relief is coming, and therefore is there improvements to pedestrian, is there improvements to work like we're not disconnected, actually work like we're connected, because you know that's what a number of people have been talking about is, you know, even when we get to this radius, do we have the bike paths, do we have the pedestrian crosses? They just installed finally a pedestrian crosswalk right by the town office that actually has the flashing lights, which makes it a little safer to cross Route 15. So, you know, those might be things that we could talk about going into that 2020 budget.
Yeah.
At our last board meeting too, you had brought up the possibility of, is it a consultant or a coordinator for transportation? Because there's so many variables, and as the school starts, you guys are going to be, you're going to be developing budget not too far away from now.
Yeah, simultaneous.
So that's one thing that I think that money allows us to do.
Yeah. It's a data, if you want to be a data-driven board, this is the kind of information that you need to make good decisions. And
Will there be a job announcement that we could share? Because I know somebody who's in this field. So
yeah, you know, there has been the transition. This board appointed during the transition up to June 30th. There was a gentleman, Gary Marcus, who has been serving as a transportation coordinator. Consultant. So there was the aspect of extending his contract from his knowledge and going through. I mean, we're really looking for something that kind of brings us to December at the latest. Probably somewhere around 10 hours a week, which for us works in a professional services. We don't have to do an RFP for that.
Right.
But I certainly, when we offline, once you inform me of who you know and what you think the benefits might be to the district, if you see some.
but we feel that our current consultant did the most possible in the circumstances to communicate and project manage.
I do. I mean, I think from the last meeting, I don't have anybody that I can point, you know, and really put my finger on and saying that that's the reason. I think we had good people with good intentions that weren't able to do all the possible work that they would have liked to. I know that I've begun talking with Gary about modeling, and you know, the concept here is to model a completely in-house and a completely consolidated contract, and that will be the two ends. And then what we can do is just work within there, and we can always tie back out to a delta of what either one of those two options would be. So that's the modeling that's going to happen between now and November, so that we have in there a series of most viable, highest likely.
we want to make sure that we can utilize that capability year after year, not a one-shot deal.
Yeah. So why don't we connect offline?
Okay.
So create some kind of model that can be modified.
Yeah.
Okay, unless somebody has something burning, I'm gonna close this subject. And we'll move on to the second reading of the mandated policy, Title I, Part A, parent involvement as written. There was some confusion around this. I think it got straightened out. The footnote got changed. It didn't get completely eliminated, but it got changed to be correct. And in fact, there were questions about the fact that the titles were different for this policy in D4, and it was determined that, in fact, it was correct that they be different.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Last thing I thought I saw from Amy was that it was okay to take out Part A. But I could have missed something. It's separating the, within Title I, and the parent involvement policy is called Part A. I don't think it's necessary in the policy, but it is what it's called. And it's how the federal government relates to it, and it's like the law behind that. So our grant has to provide this. If Title I Part A is the parental involvement part, would it be clear to say Title I Part A : Sure. Parental involvement policy? I mean, if that's what Title I Part A is.
So we could do that. We could add the colon after Part A.
Are we pulling this and bringing it back with complete
No,
edits
I think that's a minor
to the next one?
enough change that we can just agree to do that. Yes.
I just had one question about this, because I've been thinking about this one too. It has to do with the parent involvement and convening an annual meeting to talk about the requirements and rights of parents. Our annual meetings are not very high in terms of attendance. I don't know if an educational piece of this shouldn't be included in this policy to help inform parents in a more individual way.
What I've known schools to do is to address this at the school level. So this policy is really about our grant, our consolidated federal, talking all day long, consolidated federal program, CFP. This has to go along with that. If we're giving out those federal funds, they say to us that we have to have this parental involvement policy.
With the meeting.
So it usually happens. This, in schools that I've been involved with, have done this at the individual school level, presenting that to parents.
Got it.
And
Not
I'm
like
sure.
an annual.
Oh, okay.
And the parents
Yeah.
are involved would be notified.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay, because the annual meeting,
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's
Not
not
that
the
kind.
district.
Right, right.
You
Okay.
just have to meet once a year.
okay,
Yeah.
got it, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Right, then I'll entertain the motion that we approve policy E1 at second read.
As amended?
With a friendly amendment of the colon
Right.
after part.
Friendly
So
amendment.
moved.
So minor, I wouldn't include it in the motion, frankly, but you can if you'd like. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Okay, let's move on to task team updates, communications.
So Pat gave an update last time. We haven't met since then, but we are mostly focused on our Voices for Education work right now, which is at a really exciting point. And I'm really excited that Beth is going to join us at our meeting on the 21st. The 4 Words campaign that we've been doing over the summer it's great over the summer, where we expect not much will happen because everybody's extremely busy. We've spoken to more than 100 people. gotten more than 500 photos of people holding up their words and collected more than 500 words. So those words will, I'm going to give you a sneak peek, because at our retreat we're going to go through what we're going to do with those words and how that's going to play into getting a sense of what the community thinks about the vision, about informing the vision moving forward. So that's really what we've been up to with communications, and we have, we've got 10 people on the committee. All 10 of us have spent time over the summer reaching out to people and being at the booth and taking those pictures and talking to people about the work, and we're really excited about the fall and really diving in to this work.
Great. Questions for Liz? Okay. Superintendent evaluation.
Well, it was exciting. Martha and I finally got to meet with Beth regarding superintendent evaluation, and we did that on August 10th. And I was trying to look for our minutes on our website that you had passed on to Lorna. I didn't find them because I knew you made some changes. But the basic idea that came out of that meeting was we had shared with Beth the superintendent evaluation model done at the Town of Essex, CCSU. So we've shared all that information and getting that. And what came up was the job description was written quite a long time ago, and it's not up to date with proficiency-based language. So Beth is going to look at that, and she's looking at other job descriptions, and she's going to bring that back to our task team, because that really needs to happen before we base anything on that superintendent evaluation. What we came out of the meeting with, there are some givens that we know that we can base the evaluation on. Beth has an entry plan, a 100-day entry plan, so the formative eval that's done usually around November, December, that could be based upon that plan. And then the end of the year, the summative evaluation, she also has an entry plan, and I was excited to hear her mentor is Brian O'Regan. So she is using him for advice and doing some, what do you want to call it, some research.
Yes. So that entry plan will inform the transition plan or the larger plan. So and my entry plan is all about listening, gathering data. So, and I will share that with all of you on the 28th at the retreat in more detail than I did the last board meeting.
And the next meeting of our task team, if all goes well, we will meet on September 6th. And we decided that date to give Beth some time in her research.
Questions? Okay. I don't think policy met, so, yeah. Right?
No.
No, okay.
So we don't really have a defined task at this point. Will that be addressed at the?
We could address it at the retreat, yes. So I have asked for some Paul time to help us to figure out what are the next steps, since you did all the mandatory policies. The one thing that I need to do with Paul and Deb, and I would like Brian on this as a task team for administrators, to really now look at some of our procedures that I know are important for the beginning of school, that we get those in, and then start to look at, okay, so what are the next set of policies that we're going to look at, and start to have that conversation.
So one of the things that will, as we've talked about multiple times, the board does not approve procedures, but the procedures that are attached to a lot of the policies we've approved, will come out in the student handbook. So board members will get copies of the handbook, and so you'll see how the policies are going to be implemented in terms of procedures. If you have any questions, I would ask you to relay them to me, and I can put them together so that I'm not piecemealing the administration if there are questions or concerns.
Just a question, actually, since I'm relatively new to board work. With policies developed by the board, like it's in an open meeting, so there's some notification if parents are interested in like the weapons policy, they could come and talk about it, which they don't, but it's there. If somebody wants to give input on a procedure, how did they do that, whether a board member or a parent in the community?
Procedures by law are created by administrators. So they have that input, and it's your responsibility to do the policy, and then we as administrators create the procedures from that. And it's the knowledge that we bring from an educational point of view and working in the systems to create those. Because the procedures are really about, you know, the superintendent will follow through on the principal will do. So that's really not a place to get input for procedures from the public. It's really, they're really about.
Well, but if we go to
school.
being policy governance, there's a lot of things that are student facing, for instance, that we haven't addressed in the mandatory policies.
They have input on the policies, but not the procedures within those.
Right.
Well, I think, for example, of the start date of school, because that was something that, like, I talked to the old board about when I was new to the district. If that's determined in a procedure and a parent has a question or a comment about, like, the start date of school, what do they do to find out when they can talk to you about the start date of school or something?
Start date of the start time or start date? Start date? Start
Actually,
time
I'm
of
completely misspeaking myself. The starting age for school.
Okay.
That it used to be the case that in Essex Junction,
Yes.
there was a procedure if your child had a fall birthday, and that procedure was eliminated and changed.
So that's one of the procedures that I have to work on really soon too, because it's different between the past CCSU and what the town has. So I would say for something like that, it's not going to happen with every procedure. I'm thinking about things that happen within the school, like discipline and things. But that one, if they want to contact me and give me feedback on a procedure, I would welcome that.
But how do parents know, like, what the cycle is of procedures being addressed? Like, Andre has previously talked about things. Andre has previously talked about things about, like, student discipline for athletes being different in their handbook than the school handbook. Like, how would a parent know if they have something to say about discipline for athletes? When would be a good time to talk to you about that?
I would, for something like that, I would then, if it's school directed like that, I would turn to the principal and get parent input to the principal, directly to the principal. Then that can be given to us when we go to look at the procedure again. It's not a thing that we say, this procedure is going to be talked about on September 15th. We're going to discuss this procedure. They're almost ongoing conversations. Today we had great conversations around policy and procedures. And that would have been it was basically, we were looking at the two handbooks and combining them. So that was a lot of procedure talk today, but it wasn't out there for the public to come join that conversation. It's a hard one to say where it's public, but I say if they have an issue with the procedure, they should talk to the building administrator. And that will come through our work, then that voice, they can be the voice of that parent.
And it's an ongoing process.
It really is an ongoing process.
In September,
we don't know.
You can never.
The procedure is detailed.
Yes.
It's specific in an incident involving a weapon with a student. Years ago, it used to be one staff member would escort. It may not be that way today. It may change, and for good reason. It depends on the offense, depends on what evidence needs to be collected, Should the police be involved, and at what point? How do you make that determination? We can't put that in a policy. It's gonna be in a procedure.
I understand the start date one, so they can give feedback. For that one, it could come through me. I welcome feedback from parents.
I think with procedure in particular, procedure is one of those that it's good that there isn't like just a certain hearing date for it, because people engage with procedure when they engage with it. You know, it's so, you know, that you may not have may have no interests with an elementary school kid about the high school discipline of athletes, but over the course of 4 years here, you may become really engaged with that procedure. And that's why it's very much that sense of, you know, a lot of times we ask that something like that would be that sense of, well, did you start with talking to the athletic director? Let's move it up, because, you know, it will be maybe the 20th time that we've engaged somebody about the procedure. But it does change. I mean, you saw from Rob, I mean, restorative practices that are starting to come through all the schools now is definitely in response to some of these, like, definitive, like, certain 3 strikes, or this X will happen, then Y happens. So we are responsive in that way.
Does that help? Oh, sorry.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
people have different questions at different times.
Yeah.
And
Yep. It's just knowing where to refer them.
I can hold my
Okay. Okay, anything else under testings?
I think, did we have a placeholder for an executive session at the end?
We do if we need it.
We've not met, so as the negotiations council, all I can say, and it's not been digested, but Martha and I just, as I think we were sitting here, received a email from Dylan Giambisto with the recapture amounts, and I think Brian had received it separately, that the state is anticipating each district should be able to capture by following the model in the recently passed law. Then the total amount is expected to be recaptured, or meaning they will not provide revenue in that amount for the 65% in the FY18 budget, or revenue reimbursement, the current year, and then the following year they'll recapture the other 35%, meaning they will not be reimbursing for that revenue in that year. And we are at the top of the list in terms of the dollar figure that they're expecting to be able to recapture. I'm sure that can be shared. It's a public document, right, Brian?
Yeah.
Like, we've not digested this or really thought about this in the context of current offers or where we stand at impasse. But our number, and we are the number one highest recapture dollar figure, is $815,557.
Say that again?
$815,557. With the recapture for FY18 at 65% would be $530,112, and FY19 would be $285,445. CVU is right behind us. They do have a settled contract, and it was not settled anywhere near the model, so their situation is one that I'd be interested in knowing where in practice they end up. And I didn't even get to read the summary report that came with it. All we're looking at is where we sit at the very top of this list, as Brian and I glanced at this pretty fresh.
So there's 2 sort features here. So that's total gross amount of recapturing. If you look at it as a percentage of overall educational spending, we're nowhere near the top. So,
Right.
you know, it's a little bit of a basis of size.
Mm-hmm.
We probably have we are at the top of benefit spending because we have probably more employees, and
So this first recapture of 65% comes out of which budget year?
the current.
The current.
And
FY18.
yeah.
The one that started July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And to clarify, they did this with a blunt instrument based on our actual budget, not based on compared to if our teachers had the same contract as last year.
I haven't had a chance to read it through,
sure.
but they
Well,
did
like,
a
because we
deep dive.
budgeted in that we expected to save some
To
money,
save some-
right?
so-
So
and
we
so-
don't get credit for
having
expecting to save money.
anticipated,
That's correct.
and particularly, I think it's fair to say that the expectations around negotiations, knowing that there were some features that to share long-term disability across the full district was going to have a cost impact that we anticipated some savings in healthcare to help offset. We don't benefit from that expectation, which was, I think, prudent, fiscally responsible planning in the blunt instrument that you're talking about that they put to this with the law does nothing to acknowledge that there was some anticipated savings in budget. So again, I am literally seeing this right now, and I think Brian only maybe had an hour to jump on me, but yeah, Brendan.
So I'm wondering, since this is so fresh, if we should kind of hold off discussing it and maybe make this a pretty big agenda item for next time.
Yeah, and I think this is just absolutely public information that was shared, and I think for Martha and I, it was an outreach on Dylan Jean-Bista's part to have a conversation about it. Dylan's our representative in the junction, and he also sits on the Ed committee. So I think that there was a lot of question out there in terms of some of the assumptions built into the law and how they would impact what they would calculate. So I don't know that we know, in looking just at this chart, how the inputs were
I think we need to do some analysis to help us
Absolutely.
understand
Yeah.
what assumptions they made and
Yeah.
how it impacts our district. So
and how it builds into the bigger planning that had happened ahead of the negotiations process. So, and I'm sure this is information that everybody will have across all the districts, on the administrative side and on the union side as well. So it frankly is what it is, and it's the information that I think we've been anticipating would be coming mid-August, and it came mid-August, so who knew?
I had heard the 25th, so in that sense it's early. I'll forward it to all of you so you can take it. Okay.
So we won't need an executive session.
Okay. Anything else under state and local? Yep. Okay. Then next meeting is actually the board retreat, which Kim and I have been working on with Beth. And Beth, when will you send out the agenda?
I can do that Thursday.
All right.
It is created. I just have time in the office on Thursday. Tomorrow we're back with the leadership team. So.
Right. And then this item is really about our board meeting on September 5th. So does anyone have any specific items that they know need to come forward at that meeting? Okay.
Yep.
Patrick?
Something to address, maybe. On the Prudential Committee, we had talked about doing, and I went to a few open houses, which I know are starting right around that time. I don't know if it requires a full agenda item or not, but it might be nice to maybe see if we want to assign ourselves to go to school open houses, since it's something that we've done in the
Summit's
community.
conflicts with our board meeting.
So,
I'm getting those dates, or having Lorna gather those dates for us, so I can email them out.
I think that would be good if you email them out, and if people can just say, I can go to this one, I can go to this one, so I can have a feeling that there'll be at least one board member at all of them. I think rather than spending...
Summits is at exactly the time of a meeting of this board, so
Does it start at 6:30?
Yes.
Well, I guess no one's going to Summits. Is the answer.
You can wear two hats.
My
at
children
that
would
one.
appreciate it, but
You can wear two hats. At that one.
Okay. Does anyone have other items for the September 5th meeting? Brett?
So I don't think this needs to be addressed at the September 5th meeting, but a phrase came up tonight during the principal's presentation about restorative
Practice.
That's a new thing for me. I don't know if it's new for anybody else, but some of the, I think it would be helpful for us along the way to learn a little bit more about some of these acronyms that are informing the direction that's being taken in each of the buildings or across the district. And that's just one that I had never heard of before, and I was like, I wonder what that's about. And I think that could help us, just have a better understanding of the approach that principals or the district is taking around certain things.
I think that's a great idea. We've talked about board learning and trying to build that into our agenda. So PBIS is probably another example.
And Ben Johnson gave a presentation to the U46 board about the restorative practices and the move in the high school around that, and so he might be one to ask to come and do that. He gave
I think too, the middle schools, I think, have been doing some
with the
version
Community
of
Justice
that.
Center.
And so it would be especially interesting to understand them in the context of the broader district. So Ben may still be the right person, but maybe in conjunction with a middle school person.
Well, and there's another one, Anne, who also is doing that, so we can talk about that. But Anne is working with Voices now on that, to have a representation on our group around that. So we can talk about that offline again if we want to do that.
So who's Anne?
She, O'Shaughnessy. She's working on implementing, on how they're going to implement the procedure around restorative justice in the
She's
school.
doing some trainer of trainers work. So
And
that
working
she's-
closely with the Community Justice Center and with the high school administration around that. She's great and would be wonderful to come.
Right.
I think when we discuss it, what would help me is in relation to where each school sits in the process.
Right.
Because it's one thing to be given a presentation by someone. My concern is I'd like to see how it relates to each of the schools. And the other item I would like some information on is special ed, ELL, and how it is, what the differences are among the schools. Because I think there are some differences on
student
the
count.
models.
Student count, languages, that kind of stuff?
What?
Stats.
For like stats?
Or approaches.
For English
No,
language learners?
approaches. What approach is being used at what schools? And, because I'm thinking of, as we go through the year, it would help me before budget or whatever if we're talking equity. Because I know there's going to be questions from parents, why does the school have this at this point versus that one? So I would just like to know regarding the special ed and ELL, because I just want to be on the same page with how the town of Essex and Westford and the junction schools are discussing it.
Kim?
I think that's probably even broader, Marla, as I think about it, and it's a broader question of sort of like an equity inventory, and we have talked about it in our planning meetings, that before we get to budget time, we had said last time we were just trying to make the language common and make 1 + 1 = 2, and then
It's
in
more
last
than
year's
the
budget.
list for me though, Kim. I need to understand the terminology.
Right, so
Okay, I've been on a
making
board a
sure we
long
understand
time,
what
but
we're
the
talking about, yeah.
terminology starts floating around and I start getting confused. So I want a
Yeah.
refresher course as to where we sit, so I'm on the same page with administration when we're discussing things.
But I think Kim's also right that we have talked about the fact that there needs to be some kind of inventory at some point, and we're not going to address everything in this coming budget, but we need to start to be aware where are things where what we're providing is going to provide different outcomes for kids, and therefore we need to start thinking about how to get to a different place. Yes.
While we're talking about abbreviations and acronyms and stuff, something that I had thought of and then it totally slipped my mind when I started on communications was assembling a central glossary. This probably would be much easier for the administration to just have a page on the website with like
that alphabet soup
from EWSD to PBIS.
Yeah.
Because
That's awesome.
usually the information is out there somewhere.
That glossary does exist. I got it last year when I came onto the Prudential Committee, and I was asking these same questions. So I don't know where it is, especially with the web migration. But I do know that it is out there in printable form.
Awesome.
200 plus. Yeah, right. I mean, it was very helpful, but it did take some digging to find.
And it has to constantly be changed because things keep changing. So
you keep making new acronyms.
Things change at the state level, they change at the local level. Marla?
Not knowing what's on the agenda for the 28th, are we going to be discussing how we communicate with the schools and the principals throughout the year?
That is a discussion that Kim and Beth and Brian and I have started. It is not on the agenda for the retreat.
For the retreat.
But it is something we're thinking about.
So would that be coming up in the September meeting, or would that be?
I don't know if we'll be ready by September.
I think tonight was a great opportunity to get an intro to them in a consolidated way. One of the things we talked about, and not to sort of steal any thunder from the agenda, but there'll be some things that we will want to hear from our principals about, and thinking about the format for that. Like, what questions do we want as sort of information that would be important for us to know? Not parent newsletter-esque type information, but as a board, what type of monitoring or reporting would we want on a monthly or bi-monthly or quarterly basis? And I think we talked about how we might get to, as a board, talking a little bit about the questions. And I think Beth was going to help lead us through part of that. And part of our work together talking about visioning was going to help. So a little bit of what you're talking about, Marla, I think will be on there to sort of set the stage for a structure that would make sense in having some regular input from principals. So, sneak peek, I guess. I had one thing I should have mentioned for the statewide update is just hopefully folks are available for the September 11th regional meeting at the Winooski High School, I think is where it is, and it's free to us as board members, and that particular regional meeting is also going to be speaking to and understanding the resolutions that are going to be put forth at the annual meeting, there's always very relevant and timely information. I'm sure there'll be some updates on whatever information is out there regarding the impact of healthcare. So I would encourage, if folks can make it, to just hop on the VSBA website and register so they know how to plan for the meals.
Today.
Oh, good.
What's the subject?
The primary coverage is going to be on the resolutions that are going to be brought forth at the annual meeting. They're the things that guide the work for the coming year.
It's a lot about cost containment ideas, things that might be introduced at the state level.
We're speaking your language. I'm sorry. You had me at cost.
I saw it. And I'm registered.
Oh, good. Okay. That was a lead. That was a baiting question. I'm sorry, Pam, for that.
Yes.
You're invited.
I'm sorry. I was a little too close to it.
I think I registered about a month ago, but I sent an email to Carrie saying, how can I find out if I am actually registered? I couldn't.
And initially they had us, you had to put in an SU. And I was so sensitive to that. I'm like, we're not an SU here. So she changed that field so it wasn't required. I just put us in twice as UWSD, so I let her know. And I think she changed it. We probably don't have to fill the SU thing. I was like, Carrie, this is so last year.
Yeah.
So I encourage that if folks can make it. I think it'll be time well spent.
I agree. Okay.
Can I ask a question about the Voices work?
Yeah.
When I need to reach out to a principal, with Judy I used to copy the chair and the superintendent on any communication I had with a principal. Is that the procedure that you'd like to have? Is that what I should do? Okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
Again, that was there was a staff communications kind of element. So I mean, it's something that some of that might be expected by CCSU principals.
Yep.
Might be confusing for Essex Town principals, not normed at all across the district. So it's just nice that we can't work on necessarily just the implicit.
What we did.
We're going to be much better off by kind of driving to the explicit.
Yeah.
Just in these first
And those
few
come up like
decades.
every 30 minutes in our day. Norming things.
Okay, thank you.
So I would like to invite you all, Brian and I would like to invite you all to August 28th to the luncheon. And it will be here at the rink. So it's our convocation. We're actually renaming that as Essex Westford School District Opening Kickoff. It'll be guaranteed to be a lot of fun. You're welcome to be there. If we have room, no. You're welcome to be there the whole entire morning with us, but lunch will be served at noon. It's a box lunch, and then the retreat will be at 1, and will be at the police station in the conference room. But you are all welcome to come to the lunch. If you would like to arrive at 8:30, you can do that too, and be there for the whole. The whole theme is about relationships. The rink will be set up like a conference and round tables symbolizing relationships, getting to know you, and we'll be doing a lot of activities and movement in getting to know each other across the district as one community. It's kind of the theme. No, it's not kind of. It is the theme. But you are all welcome to come. Guaranteed laughs and fun movement.
And let you know if we're planning on coming?
Yeah,
Or just
sure,
show
you
up?
can do that.
Okay.
We're trying to figure out the amount of people anyway. It doesn't really matter.
What's another 10?
Yeah, exactly. We don't have a plus or minus one concern.
Can I bring a guest?
Liz and guest.
It starts at 8:30. The real in-service, or it starts at 9. But 8:30 is when people will start gathering for coffee, tea.
Great.
You can see us out there welcoming everybody. We hope to welcome everybody that arrives.
And the Voices group will be there,
Yes.
capturing words and taking photos that day too.
So would it be acceptable to come just to see that beginning and then come back for lunch?
You are welcome to come to any part of it. Okay. You can join in. We're doing lots of activities. They'll be lining up by the amount of years they've been in education. You could do that as board members and join that.
Oh, no.
We're doing a lot of, you can watch, you can, whoever you would like to, but we would love to have you in joining in the opening, and it's a celebration. So
I think I'm remembering this, and I apologize if I'm not getting this right. I think we were going to have ideally students and otherwise some steering committee members from the Voices for Education capturing 4 words from our educators as they're entering, just as a target group. Really captive audience to try.
So you'll have about a half hour. The false start, we're saying, now that it's on TV, that's fine, but we're saying that it starts at 8:45, but it'll give us a half hour you'll be able to capture words, and we'll be able to corral people to the tables.
And right now we have 6 students who are going to be there helping with that. So that's great. And and members of the steering committee too.
Right.
Do you need any
Good.
second graders?
Yes, of course. Who doesn't need a second grader?
Exactly.
Okay. Are we all set with all of that? So, we ready for the takeaways? I guess the
Back on
first.
the agenda, I'll
Oh.
just list the usuals. Task team updates, or if I don't have to, if you don't want me to. I mean, there's the basics we do, it's kind of like wasting.
I don't think you need to do that
Okay.
in the minutes. No.
Saves me time.
Okay, so takeaways. I think the first one is that we met all the principals and learned a little bit about them, about their summer, and about what their focus is for their school this year.
Will that slideshow be available?
Yes. So you can link to that. What else do you think is a good takeaway?
Transportation, again, I think we should do
My husband
a little recap of where we are.
Transportation and where things are at.
Yep.
And you could link to Brian's slides
Yep.
on that.
Yep.
Do you want that policy?
We could do the second reading of that.
That is the
policy.
last mandated, right? Like,
Correct.
so I can finally put last
Yes.
mandated. I've been edging towards it. Almost done. Just about there.
I think people have been
Pretty
waiting
close.
with bated breath too.
They are.
All 6 of my readers.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Then we don't need an executive session. So we are adjourned.
What are we gonna do?
Yeah, I can possibly to do. Great.
Maybe a first and early.
Yeah.